rats.
Yeah. I said podcast or a real.
Yeah, it was a podcast. I needed to jump on, so I had to get over there.
Did you find movies like American Sniper like realistic, accurate, true to what you experienced? Because that's all we know about the whole experience.
Right. So whoever did the set design on that movie did a fantastic job, because that's what Ramadi 2005, 2006 looked like. Whoever did that, they got that right. They got the uniforms right, that sort of thing. They missed up a couple things, like he calls home in the middle of a firefight, calls his wife. Like that part, not so much. You definitely get kicked out of the unit and sent home for doing that.
Call the girlfriend for sure.
Yeah, that's a strange time to pick to call home on the sat phone. But then they also got right what it feels like to come home, the way they visually told that story. Of him coming home. I think one time he was watching TV. There's nothing on it, I think.
That's the scene I always refer to whenever that movie gets brought up. That scene is so chilling. You see him and you hear the sounds of war, like he's watching it on TV, and you turn around and the TV's off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they got that part right. You're fighting in the streets of Iraq or Afghanistan one day, and then less than 24 hours later, you're home and you're, maybe changing your first diaper. You're, going through some bills. You're a leaky faucet, like all these things that you weren't focused on downrange, because downrange you have your best friends to your right and left, your teammates, you're focused on the mission at hand, and you're not worried about any of those things. And then you come home and they're on your plate again.
How would you assess the skill level of the American fighting force and the equipment versus some of the places you're in and what you're dealing with?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because the people you're fighting against are essentially, they're using AK-47s and variants. They're making their bombs. They're using the same RPGs that have been around for decades. And you have the most technologically superior equipment in the world. So, and they're not, and look what we've been doing for the last 20 years. So it's interesting to think of it in those terms, those asymmetric type terms. But our equipment got very good over the last 20 years. When we first entered Iraq and Afghanistan, we'd come out of the Clinton years, and we were using some legacy type gear. There wasn't really anything to spur that innovation. So we learned a lot. We applied those lessons to our gear and our tactics, and we got very good over the last 20 years at war at the tactical level. Now at the strategic level, so up here when we're talking about our politicians and senior level military leaders, not so much. For whatever reason, they seem unable to grasp what kind of a situation they're committing U.S. forces to. They don't understand the nature of the conflict in which they're engaged, and they haven't really learned over the years. So what we do on the battlefield at the tactical level is we're always learning. We're always adapting to the enemy. Enemy's always adapting to us. We're looking for gaps in the enemy's defenses. We're looking to capitalize on momentum, all these things. And then you have these senior level leaders that seem to just fail upward. So back in World War II, like George Marshall is known for the Marshall Plan after World War II. But really during World War II, what he did was fire everyone who did not meet standards. Anyone who did not perform, gone. And really in Vietnam, we started to see this change where people who didn't perform stayed in those positions. And not only did they stay in those positions, then they either retired to make a lot of money on different boards, or they moved up in the complex. So it's changed a lot over the years, and it hasn't moved back. People aren't held accountable really for performance at those senior levels these days. They fail up.
Well, Biden was talking about getting out of Afghanistan, right? Am I making that up?
No, you're not.
And is that a good thing? It's weird that these questions always seem to be unanswerable and we seem to be split. I'll tell you what's vexing to me in this country, but just in the world. Someone goes, well, we gotta raise taxes. We'll make more money. And then the other economist goes, no, you cripple the economy. Can we just get an answer to whether this helps or doesn't help? And then you go, we need to pull troops out of Afghanistan. Some of those people were there, some of those people's kids are there. And again, what are we doing? It's an endless war. And then someone else goes, are you crazy?
Yeah. The whole region will destabilize.
Why can't we have an expert? I mean, is it all political? Can we not arrive at an answer?
What is your politics and everything?
What is your opinion about pulling out of Afghanistan?
Yeah, I think it's time to it's time to leave. Hopefully, we have put in place different networks that allow us to keep tabs on what's going on there. We've had 20 years to establish different intelligence networks to get human intelligence sources over there at various levels. So say if we went in 2001, 2002, 2003, you establish a source over there who is now not 25 years old anymore. Now he's moved his way up and he's a senior level person. So hopefully our intelligence services have been smart enough to do this. And I hope they have been. I would think they have been. But at the same time, we went in there to destroy Al-Qaeda, to disrupt Al-Qaeda operations. We did that a lot faster than most people thought we could at the time. And then we took on this extra burden of nation building. We decided that we were going to combat corruption in Afghanistan. We were going to do all these things. We were going to look at sanctuaries in Iran and Pakistan. So we're going to do all these things that really have no end to them. You can spend the rest of your life trying to combat the political system and instill these different the Western ideas of democracy into Afghanistan, and you might never get there. So you could spend 50 years, 100 years doing that very same thing. So you have to come to a point where, hey, did we destroy Al-Qaeda? Do we inhibit their operations enough where we can bring people home, where we don't have to stay here forever? And I think we hit that a long time ago. But hopefully we have these intelligence networks still set up there. And also the world has changed. Before September 11th, in the 90s, 80s, you needed a physical place to train. So Bekaa Valley, of course, was one of those places. Hezbollah trained. Afghanistan was one. Sudan was one. There's these different places around the world where you physically needed to go and train and learn these things. Well, now, since 2001, we can do that virtually. Mm-hmm. We can get on we can do a lot of this planning, a lot of this training in a virtual space. So those physical locations aren't as important as they were back in 2001. And like we talked about earlier, a lot of that planning didn't take place in Afghanistan. It took place in Hamburg and San Diego and these other places. So hopefully we're taking these lessons and applying them to future decisions in a way that makes us a little wiser. But I'm not hopeful.
Let me just get some clarity. Are we able to train virtually, or are they able to train virtually? Are we both able to train virtually? Yeah,
I mean, we can both train virtually, but if you're a terrorist organization, you're recruiting someone online, then you don't need to get that person a plane ticket from, say, Chicago through Germany to Tehran to then Kabul. You had to do maybe in the 90s or something like that, but early 2000s. Now, hey, you can go and visit. You can talk about it in a secure
Google Hangout.
Yeah, go to Google Hangouts or something like that. So there are spaces where you can do that sort of thing. And of course, we're looking at that, but the internet's a big place.
I got Rob Schneider's next film, which is Al-Qaeda IT.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Yeah, he's the bumbling guy. Yeah. He's coming in there. They're always telling him he gets recruited by the CIA, but he doesn't have any training at all. They're pissed off because the virtual training is not going well.
And I don't know if this is going to help at all. Something. I think he might be part Filipino.
Oh, he can do any accent.
Good.
Any accent. So, sorry, Gene, were you going to ask?
I am curious. When you were over there, were you married or did you have kids yet?
I did. So I didn't have kids initially, but I was married, and we're still married today. So
God bless
one of the few. Yeah, there's. I wonder. Marriages take a hit.
I wonder about that. Well, thank you for your candor, because I do wonder about that. I don't have any military in my family, and I don't really know anyone. So the one question that I can't ever process is how can a marriage survive something like this, or why would you put yourself through this? Or it feels so counterintuitive to be married and then go, bye, I'm going to this super dangerous place. I can't tell you where I'm going, and I don't know when I'll be back.
Yeah, no, it's tough because the pendulum has to be on the side of the team. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to be able to talk to your spouse about that, and they have to be on board with it, because especially as a leader, that's what you owe the people you're taking down range. That's what you owe their families. That's what you owe the mission. That's what you owe the country. That pendulum has to be on that team. And if you're talking to your spouse about it, for us anyway, we talked about eventually when I'm out of the military, that pendulum's swinging back to focus on the family again. But you have to have a spouse partner that is on board, knowing that they are second. And that's just how it has to be. They are 100% second. Your family is second to the team. And they have to be on board with that. They have to know that.
When you came back,
that's tough. Not everybody can do it.
Oh, sure. And I wonder, I don't know if you experienced this, but I'm sure at some level, like you said, the adjustment, I don't know if it was post-traumatic stress or just that adjustment period. Was your wife understanding to that?
I think the only time I had a hard time coming back was after that deployment to in 2005, 2006. So it was a very busy time in Iraq, and it was one of the best deployments I ever had. It was amazing. We're doing the work every single night. I was attached to it's called the Covert Action Unit that actually inspired my second novel, True Believer. But I got back from that, and I wanted to be back. So I was just thinking, I was like, oh man, I want to be back. What are the guys doing tonight? Wow. What's happening? And my wife was like, hey, snap out of it. I was like, oh, okay. So that's all it took for us. But, other than that, I was usually very good at coming back and flipping that switch and then going from being downrange, doing that job, kicking those doors in the middle of the night to now coming home and realizing that, okay, it's time to get back into training and also balance the family and all that stuff. But knowing that, hey, my job now is to take those lessons that I learned on the battlefield, pass those along to the people that we're training up now and getting ready to go downrange with and, being a better operator, a better combat leader because of that experience. So you have to be all in all the time on that if you're in the military. And of course, my experience is very slim in special operations. That was the focus. So I'll speak to that. But in special operations, that has to be your focus. Wow.
The Terminal List is one of your books that's filming a new TV series for your first book. And Chris Pratt is starring an executive producer.
That's right.
Talk about that. That's exciting.
Yeah. What's crazy is that as I was writing the book, so as I started to get out of the military, that pendulum started to come back. So I realized I'm getting out. It's called dropping your papers. And when you do that, you tell the military you're getting out and they put you in a different pile, which means that you have to now get out of this gigantic bureaucracy and you have to stand in a lot of lines. So you go to medical and you go to dental and you go turn in gear and you get read out of secret programs. And to do each one of these things, you have to make an appointment, which are more lines. So you have essentially a year of waiting in line to do all these things, which gave me time to write. And since I was a little kid, I knew that I wanted to write. I grew up surrounded by books and this love of reading. My mom was a librarian. And I knew that was my next thing. So I started writing and I thought, who's going to play this character? Chris Pratt. Wow. And I just had that thought. And he'd only been Andy Dwyer on Parks and Rec, and he had a very small role in Zero Dark 30.
I was about to ask about that, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there was something there. I was like, he had this one role. I was like, who's the guy that's this generation's Tom Hanks? Because in the 80s, remember Tom Hanks, bosom buddies, he's doing all the comedy. And then he takes a risk with Philadelphia. Right. And from then he could do anything else that he wanted. I was like, who's that guy that needs to take a risk that's kind of known for being more fun and that sort of thing? Because I need a likable character as well. And I thought, that's Chris Pratt.
And willing to drop a few pounds.
Back then, exactly.
I mean, same as Tom Hanks, right?
Yeah, that's for Castaway.
That's
right. Well, Philadelphia.
Oh, and Philadelphia, right?
Come on, Gene.
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, big time.
Sorry, I didn't love that movie as much as you guys do.
And so what was crazy, though, is that I had no connection to him, no connection to anybody in Hollywood. And then right before the book came out, like 4 months before it comes out, I get this call from an old buddy of mine in the SEAL teams. And I hadn't talked to him in about 5 years. And he says, hey, I always wanted to call you and thank you for what you did for me in the SEAL teams. And I couldn't even remember what it was. And he said, you sat me down, you talked to me about transition, you introduced me to people in the private sector. Nobody else took the time to do that. And I always wanted to thank you. And I said, no problem. And then he said, I heard you have a book coming out. And I said, yeah, I have a book coming out. I can send you a rough draft. It comes out in a few months. And he said, well, I'd like to give it to a friend of mine. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. Who's that? And he said, Chris Pratt. And so Chris read it in December of 2017, and January 2018 he called and wanted to option it. So
nice.
We were off to the races, and now we're filming, and Antoine Fuqua was directing, and it's 350 people on set there in LA, and it's incredible to see it all come together. It's just completely surreal.
What network, if that's even a term anymore, is it going to be on?
Amazon Prime, sometime in 2022. But
and it's shooting in LA?
Shooting in LA.
That's good to know.
It's crazy.
Harbinger of good things.
Yeah, it's amazing to be out there and seeing how they do all the stunts. And it's very much like a military operation. You have Kraft Food Services is like the Army logistics chain feeding everybody. You have the explosives guy there. You have the mobility transportation guy moving the cars around just like we have in the platoon. You have the weapons guy you're trading your weapons with, and he's marking off as the actors get back and hand them in at the end of the day. And then you have Antoine as this like CO, the commanding officer, who's setting the tone up here. And you have Chris as like the platoon commander, troop commander at that tactical level, setting the tone there. So it's very much like a military operation.
Wow. What
more fun.
It's so clairvoyant, prescient, I guess, of you to...
Jack calls it Beshert.
Beshert, to be thinking about the guy from Parks and Rec playing that part. Yeah. And small in Zero Dark 30. I'm trying to...
It was a small part. He was part of SEAL Team 6, the last third of the movie. Remember the Bin Laden raid?
Yeah.
Wow. Can you hang around with us and do some news with us, Jack?
Let's do it.
All right, let me hit Tommy John, and then we'll get into some news. Tommy John, man, the best. Oh, man, when you're wearing Tommy John's hammock pouch underwear, you're so much more comfortable. You do everything better. Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. They've sold over 13 million pairs. I feel like I've said that for 9 months, so we got to be up to at least 14 million by now. I only wear Tommy John, and you will too. Dozens of comfort innovations like air mesh interior hammock, moisture wicking fabric with 4 times the stretch of competing brands. Once you've tried Tommy John, you're never going to go back to your former underwear. It is the best. I wear them every day, especially good if you're